Hey everybody, this is my thoughts on E3 as well as a few other things that I've decided to lump in there because they were announced in the wake of E3 and stuff like that. A lot of people have been asking me about the new consoles, so I figured I might as well include that in this as well. Gameplay in the background is FTL Faster Than Light. I will be reviewing that eventually, but for now, just know that I'm working on it. Anyway, the E3 conference in general was just kind of depressing. Because you had this overshadowing of the Xbox One. As in, it was just a source of negativity, I guess is the best way to put it. The reveal event for the Xbox was pretty idiotic, actually. They didn't really hit their intended audience, and instead the people who were watching were just really put off by it. Why? Because they pushed TV. The audience for it was not there at their reveal event. Instead, the gamers were there. And they were pushing TV instead of gaming. So they really pushed the idea that this is not a gaming system, but rather just a TV system. They did show a couple of games there, but not much. Anyway, when it comes to E3, they actually focused on the gaming this time around. And I have to say that what they showed at the Xbox conference was not very impressive at all. There were a couple of games there that looked pretty good, but the problem is they weren't Xbox One exclusive, and so I didn't really have any desire to actually get the Xbox One. And when you actually get through all the specs and everything, the Xbox One itself seems like it'd be a pretty ridiculous system. I mean, for one, it requires the Kinect to actually function, and you sit there going, why? Because Microsoft, they're trying to push this thing. And they had these ridiculous DRM policies on there. They actually reversed that, I believe it was yesterday. And as I'm recording this video, it's the 20th, just so you know. But suffice to say, the used game policies and everything were just so incredibly anti-consumer that everybody was just furious with them. And even worse, they revealed that the price of this thing is $500. And so we're sitting there like, $500 for a system that doesn't really know what it's doing, or what it's meant to be, with a lot of stuff that doesn't really seem to take advantage of the hardware and doesn't take advantage of all the new features. And it's being pushed as a TV system, and you're wanting to charge $500 for this thing. Whatever, guys. We're gonna just not do that. I mean, at least the controller looks okay. But, I mean, it's Xbox 360 controller slightly modified, so what do you expect, right? I actually really like the 360 controller, by the way. It just actually feels really nice in my hands, so what ends up happening with that is I just feel really comfortable with that. And when I compare that to, say, the PlayStation controller, I sit there and go, oh, you guys are crazy if you like the PlayStation controller. Either that or you must have tiny hands. One or the other. I don't know. Because I cannot hold that PlayStation controller. It actually hurts my hands to use it. So, it's a mess. The new one at least looks slightly larger than the older PlayStation controllers, so that might help a bit, but I really doubt it because the layout is still exactly the same, and I also hate that layout. At any rate, the Xbox One doesn't really have anything big going for it. It's running on 3 operating systems. Why? I mean, you have Windows 8 running on it, you also have the Xbox operating system that runs the games, and then you have the transitionary OS, which just manipulates all of these. It just basically combines the two, and it makes the whole thing function. And the entire time I'm hearing about this stuff, I'm sitting there going, why? Don't they know this is terrible for the hardware? If you don't know anything about programming, then you don't really know what having 3 operating systems on it actually does to the hardware. It takes up a lot of system resources. Particularly when you have an operating system that's actually a computer operating system, as well as a tablet and phone operating system, running at the same time as a second and a third operating system. All simultaneous. So this is probably going to mean bad things for what they can actually do with the Xbox One as far as the hardware goes. It's not a pleasant thing. There was also the requirement to install games. I don't know if they fixed that or not, but that you did have to install games on it to actually be able to play them. And that seems like it would take up the 500 gig hard drive really, really quickly, particularly if they're all on Blu-rays, because the max storage capacity of a Blu-ray is currently about 50 gigs. So that could be really bad. We'll see what happens, I guess. Apart from that, what the actual things were shown at E3, the actual games. There were a lot of racing games shown this year's E3, and I was not impressed at all, because I've never liked racing games. There's only 2 racing games that I've ever liked in my entire life, and I've played quite a few racing games. And these are from the 90s, so there's really nothing there as far as I'm concerned. I didn't even pay attention to the racing stuff. But the Xbox conference itself, they showed off Titanfall, which is the new FPS from Respawn Entertainment. They are the guys who split off from Infinity Ward and went and joined EA and said, hey, we're going to make this new studio and new game. And it actually looked pretty cool. It's a first-person shooter, but it's also got mechs in it and parkour, and if they pull it off, it could be really, really good. But it was kind of funny, because at the Xbox conference, they said it was exclusive to Xbox One, but then they're like, no, actually, it's on Xbox 360 and PC as well. Well, suffice to say, I'll be getting the PC version of that. At any rate, it actually looked really cool, and I'm really pleasantly surprised by it, but it didn't look like anything particularly new in terms of the gunplay and stuff like that, so it's what you'd expect from guys who develop Call of Duty as far as the gunplay goes. But the rest of it actually looked really cool, and I'm glad that they're actually stepping away from something that's just so overdone these days. They also showed off Metal Gear Solid 5, which is actually not an Xbox One exclusive. It is on both of the big next-gen consoles. I believe it's also on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Open world in a Metal Gear Solid game. I'm really curious to see how that pans out. And there actually is a possibility of a PC version for that, so if that ever happens, then I'll be overjoyed, because maybe we'll actually get Metal Gear Solid 3 and 4 on PC. 4 probably not, because it's a PS3 exclusive, but maybe MGS 3, and maybe digital re-releases of MGS 1 and 2, because if you don't know, those actually had PC versions, and they were actually pretty good PC versions. Anyway, excited for that. Apart from that, they showed off The Witcher 3, but as we all know, that's a PC game that's basically being ported to Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So, nothing really to speak of there, apart from The Witcher 3 actually looks really, really freaking good. So I'm really excited for that one. I'm trying to get through Witcher 2 right now to get up to that one, but really looking forward to Witcher 3. Apart from that, they showed off a spiritual successor to Panzer Dragoon. I never played Panzer Dragoon, so I don't really know anything about that series, but the demo they showed at E3 actually didn't have any sound because they were having technical issues, but it didn't look bad. It's called Crimson Dragon, I believe. They showed a bit of Quantum Break, which we still don't really know what that thing's about. That's the new game by Remedy, and if you don't know, I actually rather enjoyed Remedy's games. I haven't played Alan Wake's American Nightmare or Alan Wake yet. They're both basically sitting on my hard drive waiting to be played. But I need to get around to playing those. But everything else they've made, I've enjoyed. So maybe Quantum Break would be really good. The problem is it's Xbox One exclusive. And since we don't really know anything about it yet, and the Xbox One itself is not particularly impressive as far as consoles go, and in fact, I don't really see the Xbox One being commercially successful. This could be a very bad thing indeed. They also showed off this game Rise, Son of Rome, which is pretty much a current-gen hack and slash with tons of QTEs in it, only with better graphics than the current gen. That's about it. That's not really enough to draw people in. They also showed off Killer Instinct, which the developers for it aren't Rare anymore, and the current Microsoft Rare studio is just basically nothing of what the original Rare was. So there's not much to speak of there. And actually, the current main developers for Killer Instinct have a really, really terrible track record. So that doesn't inspire confidence. They were really trying to push their smart glass technology with that, and that was where they basically are using the tablet as a controller, and I was just sitting there going, what's the point of that? Why are they pushing this so much? What's wrong with an actual gamepad? Is there something wrong with a gamepad? Anyway. They also showed off this game, Sunset Overdrive, which was, at least it was really bright and colorful. I'm really pleasantly surprised by that. But, it's Xbox One exclusive, so I ultimately don't care, but it looked like it could have been okay. That's about all I can really say about it. They showed off a teaser trailer for Halo 5. What a surprise. Yet another Halo game. That series, just... why? Just why? And, then they also showed off Dead Rising 3, which is brown and grey and realistic. So, yeah, that's the complete opposite of what Dead Rising fans want. Dead Rising 1 and 2 were wacky and colorful, and they did not take themselves at all serious. And this one takes itself way too seriously. Except for the fact that you could call an artillery with your phone? What? It doesn't even make sense. I guess if you have 3 arms, it works out okay, but I don't know. But anyway, the Microsoft conference was just so lifeless and there was no enthusiasm, so it was really hard to inspire confidence in their system. Anyway, the next conference was EA, and the conference after that was Ubisoft. I'll get to that more in a moment, but then there was also the other big console, which was, of course, PlayStation 4. Which was, of course, fully unveiled at this year's E3 and the Sony conference, which was the last conference of the day. And they also talked about PlayStation 3 and PS Vita, and how they're doing quite well with The Last of Us right now. I really wish that the Naughty Dog would actually bring their games to PC, but no, they're owned by Sony, and Sony says, screw you, PC. Anyway, The Last of Us, woo, whatever. And they also talked about a few things that are coming to PS3 soon. They talked about a few things that are going on with PS Vita, and then they fully launched into the PlayStation 4 stuff. And as far as the hardware goes, it is superior to the Xbox. There's no real surprise there. It's also $100 cheaper. Yeah, they pretty much won that generation right off the bat, right there. Even better, they actually had talking points. And it's sad that this has to be a feature of consoles now, but they said you can just lend your games to whoever you want, you can trade them in, you can sell your used games, you can do whatever you want with your used games, basically. They said you don't have to be connected to the internet to play your games. There's no other ridiculous requirements like that. They did actually require you to have PlayStation Plus in order to actually be able to play online now, but the trade-off is that you don't have to have a PlayStation Plus to access all the extra features of the PlayStation 4 online. There are quite a few bonuses to having PlayStation Plus, but you don't have to have that to, say, use Netflix, which is something that you don't have with the Xbox. You still have to have Xbox Live Gold to be able to use Netflix on it, which is just funny. But anyway, they talked about a few things that were coming to the PlayStation 4, like Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 15, which I don't care about either of those. I haven't cared about a Final Fantasy game since Final Fantasy 6. Seriously, I haven't liked any of the series since Final Fantasy 6 at all. Yeah, it's depressing. Not even FF7, because I've never actually played FF7. So there you go. Anyway, and Kingdom Hearts I never cared about at all, because the very concept to me was just stupid. I sat there going, Disney characters in a JRPG? What? It doesn't even make sense. Who thought this was a good idea? And as a result, I've never even bothered considering picking up the series. It's just something I never wanted to do. So if you're all like, "Ooh, please review Kingdom Hearts," it's not going to happen. Anyway, they also showed off some Assassin's Creed 4 gameplay, which is actually something that went on with the Ubisoft conference as well. They showed off some Watch Dogs gameplay. They talked about Killzone, that there's a new Killzone coming, who gives a crap, as well as a game called The Witness, which is Number None's new game, and if we know Jonathan Blow, then we know that that game is going to be incredibly pretentious. They also showed off a bit of infamous Second Son, which, who really cares? But anyway. PlayStation 4's exclusives didn't look all that great right off the bat, but they didn't look bad either, so there's not much to be said there. Fun thing about both consoles, neither of them are backwards compatible with the previous gen's games. PlayStation 4 is not compatible with PS3 games, and Xbox One is not compatible with Xbox 360 games, so you have to keep your old consoles in order to be able to play all those games. Although they did say that if you had games on PSN with PS4, you can still play those, but it's apparently like the discs, I don't know what's going on with it. They didn't really detail that very well. But anyway, the PlayStation 4 looks like a better console than the Xbox One. There's no real argument there. But that's not really saying all that much. It still doesn't look like it's going to be that great of a console, particularly when the specs aren't pretty much inferior to current PCs. Yeah. I know quite a few people who have way better PCs than the current consoles, and they didn't really spend all that much on them. Anyway. Suffice to say, the big console reveals and such like that were the big focus of it, but there were also quite a few games shown at E3 this year. Most of those were shown in the EA and Ubisoft conferences, as well as being actually on the show floor and not having those big conferences. You had, of course, Titanfall, which I mentioned, Witcher 3. At the EA conference, they, of course, showed off Battlefield 4 with 64-player multiplayer, and apparently, which is now on console as well with the new gen. It looks exactly the same as Battlefield 3, only more scripted. Why are people so excited about it? I have no idea. Although they did bring back Commander Mode, which is, in Battlefield 4 is going to be terrible, because I guarantee you that's going to be used to spam artillery on your teams. So, prepare for team killing to go up the wazoo! Apart from that, again, it looks exactly the same as Battlefield 3, and ironically, they already have 2 DLCs planned for it and announced. 2 DLCs for it announced already! The game hasn't even been released yet! What is Battlefield turning into? The Sims? Ugh. It's terrible. Yeah, I have no desire to get Battlefield 4. At all. Apart from that, they showed off Mirror's Edge 2, which I'm pretty excited for. I hope that they fix the problems I have with Mirror's Edge 1, otherwise Mirror's Edge 2 probably won't be all that great. Mirror's Edge 1 had a lot of really cool ideas, but it didn't capitalize on them and didn't do them all that well. And that was my main problem with it. And it was certainly something that could have been very much improved with a sequel, and I hope they do it with this one. They showed off a bit of Dragon Age. The Dragon Age Inquisition is no longer Dragon Age 3 Inquisition, it's just Dragon Age Inquisition. And, of course, Morrigan's back. Woo. At any rate, I don't know if I'm going to be getting that one or not. Currently, it's one of those things I don't really want to get it, but it may be something I pick up if I can find it for really cheap or something like that. I don't really have much trust in BioWare right now. Let's put it that way. But the big reveal at the EA event was actually Star Wars Battlefront. They showed a teaser trailer for that and said that DICE is working on it. So, it could be really, really good, or it could be really, really terrible. We're not really sure yet. Because DICE hasn't really done very well in terms of games in the past couple of years. So, we'll see what happens there. It was just an announcement, really. It wasn't actually any gameplay or anything. It was just a quick teaser trailer that says, hey, this is what this is. And it was kind of funny when they announced that, because they were like, oh, DICE is using it to make a new blockbuster game. And we're like, oh, Battlefield 4. Only, wait a minute, this is snow. This isn't Battlefield 4. Wait. Oh, shit, that's a snow speeder! Battlefront! Ah! Anyway. The reaction to that was pretty amusing, because even I was sitting there going, no freaking way. They were announcing this way early. We knew that they were going to make it, but we just didn't expect them to announce it this quickly. Nobody expected them to announce Battlefront at this year's E3. Nobody. So that was a big surprise, and that was a pleasant surprise, actually. I just hope it doesn't suck. Let's see. Apart from that, Plants vs. Zombies 2, I don't really care. They were trying to push that one. I was like, really, guys? You're going for it. Okay, whatever. They also showed off a bunch of their sports crap. I don't care about their sports crap, but seriously, Madden 25, people. Madden 25! Why? Why do you people keep buying Madden games? What is wrong with you? Ugh. $60 a year for a roster update. And the big innovation with NBA Live was that they actually simulate physics on the friggin' basketball. That was their big innovation. That's just depressing. Anyway, Ubisoft kind of stole the show this year as well. Of course, they had the big games that were going to be shown, and we knew that. We knew they were going to show Watch Dogs, which I'm pretty pumped for. Watch Dogs looks really interesting, and it's certainly something we haven't seen before. So I'm really curious to see how that turns out. I'll be getting my hands on that when I can, but we'll see when that is. They showed off a bit of Assassin's Creed 4, which I'm not really too keen on. It's something that, first off, I haven't played the rest of the games in the series yet. I've only played Assassin's Creed 1. And so I don't really know what to do with Assassin's Creed 4, but even then, I look at that and I go, this doesn't look like an AC game. This looks like a pirate game, and that's exactly what it is. It's a pirate game. And I don't really see where it fits in with AC. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. They showed off a bit of the new Splinter Cell game, which I'm not really too keen on either, because even though I haven't played Conviction yet, I just know it's going to be all action and no sneaking, which is entirely what Splinter Cell is all about. It's all about the sneaking. And plus, they don't have Michael Ironside back for Sam Fisher, which is really depressing, because he kind of made that character almost. It was a combination of the writing and him just being awesome. And now they don't have him being awesome, so they better have good writing for that character. Anyway, they also showed off Rayman. I've never actually played Rayman, so I don't really see what all the big fuss was about that, but it didn't look bad. But the big thing they showed at this year's E3 with regards to Ubisoft was Tom Clancy's The Division. And that looks really interesting. They described it as an RPG, but it didn't look like a role-playing game at all. It looked like a third-person shooter. And that's not a bad thing, but don't call something what it isn't. Just don't. They haven't confirmed a PC version for that yet, but it's probable. It doesn't seem like something that they would skip out on PC for, just the way they've described this thing. It's the big thing at this year's E3 was a lot of online interconnectivity. You could jump into other people's games and help them out, or get help from other people and stuff like that. And if this stuff works, it could be really cool and work really well. But if it doesn't, then that could be a really big problem. But The Division actually looks really cool. It has a cool premise. The gameplay actually looked pretty solid for the most part. They obviously have all pre-rendered stuff at E3. But I'm really curious to see how that one turns out, and I really hope we get a PC version for that. Now, what about the rest of the stuff they showed at E3? There was Project Spark, which was shown at the Microsoft conference, which is basically a full sandbox, do whatever the hell you want kind of game. Problem is that not only is it free to play, which I'm curious to see how they pull that off, but it's Windows 8 and Xbox One and Xbox 360. But Windows 8, there's the problem right there. Windows 8. There's no support for Windows 7. Why? It doesn't even make sense. I'm guessing they're just doing it as a Metro app or something, because having no support for Windows 7 is frankly idiotic. Because nobody really likes Windows 8, particularly not gamers, who just don't really care about Windows 8. It's a tablet and phone OS. It's not a desktop OS. But the game itself actually looked pretty cool. I'm curious to see how they pull that off. But again, Windows 8, Xbox One, Xbox 360. whatever. There was Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z, which it looked weird. I'm not really sure what to think about that. The only Ninja Gaiden game I've played is the one from 2004, the one on Xbox, and I haven't played much of that right now, but I don't really know how this series has progressed, and I don't know whether to be excited about Yaiba or not. Sony debuted Destiny, and actually had some gameplay on it, and it was really funny watching that, because the entire time I was getting the feeling like, hey guys, look at this! It's totally not Halo! Because the gunplay and everything looked exactly like Halo. Literally, it looked exactly the same. And, while the gameplay in general, aside from the shooting mechanics and everything, looked slightly different, and it looked like more like Borderlands, actually. It was kind of weird watching this thing, because I'm sitting there like, they're trying really hard to mask the fact that this is pretty much just Halo as far as the gunplay and everything goes. But it looked interesting, and there's a possibility of a PC version, which it seems like it would work up pretty well on PC, so I'm curious to see how that one turns out. Granted, I haven't really liked Bungie games, most of them anyway, so we'll see how that goes. At least the ones I've played anyway. I haven't really played all their games, but the games I have played that they've done, I haven't really liked all that much. There's this new game, Murdered Soul Suspect, which looks really interesting. It's it reminds me of L.A. Noire, only you play a ghost, and you're trying to solve your own death, which is actually a really cool idea, and I'm curious to see how they pull that off. But, what they showed at E3 was actually really interesting, and they really piqued my interest, so I'll be looking forward to picking that up later on. There's, of course, the new Wolfenstein game, which doesn't look very good. It's a brand new studio. They are completely untested. They have never developed anything. It's being published by Bethesda, although that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Them as a publisher isn't too bad. But the game itself just doesn't look that great. It looks like just another FPS. At least they've gone a bit off the deep end and made it some ridiculous premise that isn't just another modern military FPS, but still. There's the new Thief game, which doesn't look anything like Thief. I'm not sure what they're trying to go for with that one, but it doesn't look like Thief. And, well, it doesn't look terrible either. It just doesn't look very good. And I'm kind of ambivalent to it right now. I'm wondering how that's going to turn out, and I hope it doesn't turn out for the worse. There's also, of course, Dark Souls 2, which actually is looking really good right now. There's, of course, going to be a PC version for that, and I'll be picking that up when I can. But I really hope that this time around it doesn't require a freaking gamepad on PC. Because if it does, then I'm not going to be a happy camper. Apart from that, Saints Row 4. I am so glad they went off the deep end with this one. I mean, Saints Row 3 was just ridiculous, and it was great because of it. Well, not great. It was rather good because of it. And there were a lot of great moments, I should say. Saints Row 4 looks even more ridiculous. I mean, things like the dubstep gun, and you're now the president and you get superpowers. And you just sit there going, what? I mind blown. And it looks ridiculous. And I'm so curious to see if they pull it off. Because that was the one thing this series needed, was to just go completely off the rails. And they did just that. And they're going even more off the rails with this one. So hopefully it turns out for the better. It's supposed to come out later this year, so we'll see how that one works out. I doubt I'll be able to get it on release, but hopefully soon after. It does seem like it's going to have really hefty hardware requirements on PC, though, so that could be a problem. But anyway, I didn't really come out of this year's E3 looking at anything that I already hadn't been looking at, basically. There was mostly games that I already knew were going to happen and was already interested in, and I was just looking for more information to kind of confirm that sort of thing. They did give more details about the Shadow Warrior reboot, which doesn't look very good, to be honest with you, because they've kind of gotten rid of the one thing that made Shadow Warrior so awesome, and that was the fact that Lo Wang is frickin' hilarious. And this one seems a bit too serious. It's by the guys who did Hard Reset, so we'll see how that goes, but I don't know. Apart from that, I can't really think of anything offhand that I've missed about this year's E3. If there's anything that you'd like to ask me about, feel free to go ahead and do that. Yeah, do so in the comments. Sorry, I'm not scripting this thing or anything. It's just going off the top of my head. Again, if you have any questions about any other sorts of things, just feel free to ask it in the comments. And if I missed something, feel free to let me know, because I probably did miss something. There was a lot of information at this year's E3. And there were, of course, the other things I mentioned as well. Anyway, I will catch you guys in other videos.